Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner, Classic / Non-Classic. This is episode number 666, and Doubleshot number 570. Now, with number like that, what book am I going to review first for this Doubleshot? Why, it's Showcase presents The Super Friends, Volume 1. And just so that you know, this is the only one DC ever published because they just didn't care. Yeah, that was the weird thing about these Showcase books. Half the time they do these volume 1s and they don't do a volume 2 or 3 or 4. This one could have had one more volume because I looked it up. Apparently this series lasted for 47 issues. And yet they only released one Showcase book. My personal guess? It probably didn't sell too well. Kind of the same thing with other books like Elongated Man, Green Arrow, yeah, those ones. And you have books like Batman, Green Lantern, and Justice League get like close to 6 or 7 volumes before DC stopped releasing these things. Yeah, believe it or not, DC stopped releasing these things like 3 years ago. I actually own the last official book they released from the Showcase line. Excuse me, that's the Blue Beetle. Yep. This was released back in 2014, roughly 1 year before they actually stopped producing these things. I still don't know the reasoning for this at all. It's kind of the same thing when Marvel ended the Essential novels. Yeah, as far as I know, I have never heard a reasoning for it. Possibly due to the fact that maybe the books weren't selling as well as they probably would, or they just want to do something else. In the case of Marvel, they replaced the Essential novels with the Epic collections. In the case of Showcase books, they replaced them with the Golden, Silver, and Bronze Age books. Yeah, and similar books like that. This, of course, has never gotten one at all. This just collects the first 24 issues of the series. Oh yeah. These two are Wendy and Marvin. Yeah, these two were taken out of the book roughly about 10 issues in and replaced with the Wonder Twins. Yep. Unlike the TV show, which is not canon to the DC universe, this one surprisingly is, despite the fact that in this book, Justice League half the time referred to as the Super Friends, which is really bizarre. And they have appearances in here by various people, and like the Justice League book, the lineup kept frequently changing almost like every issue. Like they had an issue where Black Canary appeared for some reason without Green Arrow, despite the fact a lot of the time when she's showing up, she generally appeared with Green Arrow. This has kind of been a thing since the 70s. And this book was released in the 1970s. Well, these issues were over the course of 4 years, from 1986 to 1979. And I was thinking, okay, 24 issues. How in the world did they manage to, release that many amount of issues in just 4 years? Well, there kind of is a reason for that. The series came out every couple months. Yeah, apparently DC did not get on the bandwagon of releasing a book monthly. It took them like halfway through the 70s. Heck, even took them a while to get into the game of releasing annuals with new stories. Marvel started doing it back in the 60s. DC didn't start doing it until the 1980s. Though Batman and Green Lantern had annuals, they mostly were reprints. Yeah. And apparently it took Batman a long time to release monthly. Because half the time, like the highest they released in 1 year at one point was like 11 issues. Yeah, kind of like Witchblade. This, of course, started out come out bi-monthly, come out every couple months. This was like this for quite a while, actually. Yeah, this was like this up until for the first 14 issues it was like this. And then starting issue 15, it was released monthly. Now, pretty much all the issues in here, except for I think it's 2 of them, issues 20 and 24, are written by E. Nelson Bridwell. The 2 issues that are not written by him, written by Denny O'Neil under the pen name of Sturgis O'Shaughnessy. Yep. Now, this one, unlike in the case of Elongated Man, pretty much most of the people who work in this book, as far as I can tell, are still pretty much alive because this came out in the late 70s. I think mostly everybody who worked in this book is pretty much still alive, so there's a plus for that. And as for villain appearances, we had the first couple issues by guest appearances by the Penguin and Cheetah. We also had Kronos and various other characters. I even like what they did with the Wonder Twins in here. Oh yeah, another thing, Aquaman here is not treated as a joke like he is in the TV show. Yeah, apparently his power is, oh yeah, he can talk to fish and he rides jet ski. Here, the jet ski does not make an appearance. I think even E. Nelson Bridwell probably knows, so yeah, I am not going to portray Aquaman that way. At all. Even Denny O'Neil basically put his foot down about that, probably about that as well. Robin, of course, occasionally made occasional appearance like a TV show where he was part of the Super Friends. Here, he was not a regular member. I think he's more like a reserve member, called him occasionally. And this is actually set in the Earth 1 universe. I gotta say, this is actually really, really good for a series called Super Friends. And yes, this is the series that introduced the Global Guardians, the group that Fire and Ice become part of, though they didn't make a debut in the Justice League comic book. This is actually pretty good. I'm going to get this roughly a 9.5 out of 10. Set this over here. Alright, next up is the first of 3 of these books. Next I'm covering the last 2 books released for this volume of this series. Animal Man! This, of course, is the 3rd volume, Rotworld, Red Kingdom, collecting Animal Man, Volume 2, Issues 2 and 19, and Swamp Thing, Volume 5, Issues 12 and 17. All the Animal Man issues are written by Jeff Lemire, mostly anyways. The issues that start off the Rotworld story, which is issue 12 of Animal Man, issue 12 of Swamp Thing, both those 2 issues are done by both Jeff Lemire and Scott Snyder. Issue 17 is kind of the same thing, where even though it's kind of the epilogue of this particular story, also written by Jeff Lemire and Scott Snyder. Now, yes, I have reviewed the first 2 trades. You have to look them up on my YouTube channel. The first couple of volumes, I have reviewed those things like roughly a few years ago, and I decided now to finally finish reviewing this. And yes, I have reviewed trades that collect the Grant Morrison run from the first volume of the series. Oh, by the way, those of you curious how long the first volume lasted for, it was 89 issues. This volume lasted for 29 issues. Like the first volume went through about 5 or 6 writers. This volume had 1 writer. That's right, 1 writer over the course of 29 issues, which actually is pretty good. Oh, and by the way, when this book was released in 2011, this is by far one of DC's top 10 best-selling titles. And Animal Man is not that big of a character. I think he's like a B-lister in a way, but people do know about him, and this book is really, really good. I enjoy the Rotworld stuff. It is just really, really good. The only thing said about this story is the fact that Animal Man's son gets killed off at the end of the storyline. Yeah, he dies. He gets killed by saving his father from something from Rotworld. Yeah, Rotworld had apparently been built up in the pages of Animal Man since issue 1. Yeah, and this was the culmination of a long, 1.5 year long storyline that both Lemire was doing Animal Man and Scott Snyder was doing in the pages of Swamp Thing. And at the start of this, Animal Man meets Swamp Thing for the first time. As far as I know, in pre-Flashpoint, I don't think these 2 ever officially met, but it's great the fact that they actually do show up in here. Yep. Now, I will talk about the next volume, who shows up in there. It's a bit of a surprise. But this is really, really good. I highly recommend this if you are fans of Jeff Lemire, fans of the character Animal Man, and just recommend just try it out. It's really good. This is the 3rd of 5 volumes that collect the 2nd volume of the series. The first volume, as far as I know, has been mostly put into trade, except there's still 1 more trade I think that should come out, and it should collect the final 10 issues of the first volume. Overall, the series only had about, like, the 11th issue of this volume is technically the 100th issue of the entire comic book. Yeah, I think overall there's only about 118 issues overall released this series, unlike Swamp Thing, which had almost 300 issues by the time they finished up the last published volume that came out roughly 2 years ago. I give this book a 9.5 out of 10. It's really, really good. Alright. So, that's it for this episode. Next episode, I conclude reviewing the trades to collect Ant-Man Volume 2. As for when I'm going to continue reviewing trades from Volume 1, I don't know yet. Whenever I get a chance to get my hands on those trades, okay? But until I see you in the next episode, which is going to be episode number 667 and Doubleshot number 571, okay? But to see you there, bye.